Hi there, it is Elaine King with Simply-Healthy.com, and I'm coming to you today with a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Not necessarily by choice, but it's something that I think a lot of us are struggling with, and it's having a huge effect on our health. I'm talking about our physical health, our mental health, and also our spiritual health. And that is this whole thing of perfection. I can remember when I was interviewing for jobs before I was leaving college, one of the things that I used to love saying when they asked about what is your biggest weakness is that I was a perfectionist. Now, of course, you always wanted to say a weakness that could also be seen as a strength, and I actually thought that was a strength when it was all said and done. The ability to do whatever it took to get a job done and to do it with excellence. Now that was my take on it. I thought I was being a person who strove for excellence. But what I found is that that was a very hard role to live up to. Because guess what? None of us are perfect. There's only one perfect person who's ever been on this earth, and you know who that is. So why is it that we put this burden on ourselves of perfectionism? And it's because it's how we've been wired. So I want to help you through today how to change that all around. On a personal note, how this has manifested in my life, one of the ways, of course it happens in a lot of ways, is when I started this journey years ago. I knew I had a problem with sugar. I knew it was something I wanted to work on, but I was terrified of the idea of someone telling me that in order to fix this problem that I was telling myself I had to totally give up sugar, which was my issue. I was going to totally give it up. And I just couldn't imagine being able to do that perfectly. But that's how I knew I had to do it. Or so I was telling myself. So guess what? I didn't focus on it at all. I spent very little time. I mean, it was constantly in my mind, knowing what I should be doing, but I didn't really put forth full effort, a full commitment to do something about it. So I entered into perfection paralysis, and this is something that I've seen come up. And by the way, when I mentioned earlier in the week that I was going to do a special training session to you as my gift, and I talked about what it was going to be about. Ever since then, I have been bombarded with all this topic of perfectionism. I've seen it on the television, I've read it in magazines I've read in, I even saw it in my scripture reading in the Bible, via emails that I'm receiving. So this is something that's definitely powerful in the universe right now, and we're being called upon to deal with it. So, back to my story. So I wasn't dealing with the fact that I knew I had a problem, but because I felt I couldn't achieve it perfectly or to whatever standard, I didn't want to work on it at all. Or I think subconsciously I was doing it. I wasn't trying to be obstinate. But when I chose to move forward, I just put one step and I decided to go to a class about sugar, dealing with your sugar problem. When I arrived at that class and I started to hear what was being said, my heart opened, and I really experienced true freedom in this area of sugar, even though I hadn't even stopped eating sugar at that point. Because what I was told during that class is that I'm not going to tell you that you can't have sugar anymore. That's not necessarily the goal here. The goal is to change your relationship with sugar. And by her telling me this, and by the way, this is a health coach who is now my mentor, by her telling me this is what helped to open me up. So it took down those walls, took down those barriers that I had created of how I had to do it perfectly. And it was just about taking some small steps. So as I started to take those steps, one foot in front of the other, I can tell you today, my issue with sugar is not the same as it used to be years ago. Okay? Does that mean I'm doing it perfectly? Absolutely not. But guess what? That's not what I meant to do. But what I do know how to do is to get back on track very quickly. Okay? So when it comes to this perfection thing, as I said, it can turn into perfection paralysis. What in your life have you noticed you're experiencing perfection paralysis? Something in your heart of hearts you know you're being called to do, something that you know you need to do, or maybe there is a comparison, some image that you're trying to reach, and since you can't reach it the way you think you should, then you're holding back and not doing it at all. And then I want you to think about what is the root of that struggle. Okay, because for me, it wasn't just about eating certain foods. It was about dealing with other issues in my life that were going on, which were leading me to eat more sugar than I should have been eating. So can you think about what's the underlying thing that is holding you back? What fear is it that's there that's keeping you in this paralysis state? And then I want you to think about what can you do starting today to move forward in a positive direction. Something very small. I'm not looking for big steps here. Actually, just being aware of it. The awareness you're going to create today is going to be a step. But think about what's another step. And so then that's how we make progress. We can learn all kinds of things. We can get tons of information. I've been receiving tons of information about this perfection idea. But if I don't implement it, put it in practice, all that information, all those words and messages mean absolutely nothing. Okay? So the point is to make one step, do that, and then go to the next step, and then go to the next step, and then go to the next step. And what happens if you fall off track with one of those steps? Reverse the process and start again. But you will receive so much freedom, feeling of freedom, openness. You'll be able to relax more, knowing that you are moving forward in a direction that is going to benefit you. Now, doing this on your own is possible, but it's not easy. That's why we are offered opportunities to get support in certain areas. And my 8-week Simplify Your Life group program is designed to do exactly that. We'll take your one specific thing, that thing that you are in paralysis about, and take you step by step in how to make some progression. And guess what? When you start making those progressions, those steps, God, the universe, our creator, steps in and starts working for you. It's when we pull back and we don't do anything, that's us taking control, that's self, that's ego. When we start moving forward in spite of fear, in spite of not doing it all right, in spite of failure, that's when the universe steps in and is there to help. Okay, so that's where that freedom comes from. That's where that feeling of release comes from. So what are you going to do? You're going to write down, I'd like for you to write down, what is one thing, because I know there's lots of things, but what is one thing that you're experiencing perfection paralysis on? Write it down. Then I want you to write down, why is that a struggle? What is that underlying fear? And then I want you to write down, what are you going to do today to move forward in a positive direction? I'd like to hear from you to find out, when you take that first step, what does it feel like? What kind of feelings do you have by taking that first step, by releasing some of that pressure that you've been putting upon yourself? I can't wait to join you on this journey, and until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Be well.